This episode of the Operatory podcast is brought to you by HungryDino.com. In less than 3 minutes, you can find out what outdated policies, procedures, and technology you are using and how much it is costing you. Take the quick survey at HungryDino.com. Welcome to the Operatory podcast, the podcast about burying the dinosaurs in dentistry, moving past outdated technology and procedures to find a better way. With me, as always, is the man providing the important patient perspective, my man, David Pryor. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, Brian, I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm a little upset, man.
I didn't do it.
No, you did it, yes. We both did.
Okay, what did we do?
We failed one of our listeners, my friend.
Oh, okay. Well,
Do you know the failure of which I am discussing?
do I ever know what you're talking about?
No,
before
you never.
reveal
Yeah,
it to
never.
me?
Yeah, and I put you on the spot anyway.
Yeah.
But so we failed one of our customers from, I think it was Argentina,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we had a listener go out and buy an Oculus headset and be like, "Where's the content that works for dentistry?" Right?
Yes.
and we failed them.
Yes.
Right. And so, you were the person that actually handled this communication. So I'll let you kind of set the stage for what happened. Then we can talk about why we failed them and what we can do about it.
Well, it was a great one, actually, because they opened my eyes to a really great way to handle that question of, what's the difference between our OperaVR headset versus just going to Best Buy and picking up an Oculus Go, right?
Well, for new listeners to the podcast, OperaVR is therapeutic virtual reality that eases dental anxiety in the operatory, proven to reduce anxiety, pain by somewhere between 33 and 60%. So it's huge. It transforms the dental experience, and we've been talking about it on the podcast because it's obviously something that we're both passionate about. Reducing dental anxiety, solving the biggest problems comes from also are the biggest opportunities we have, right? And I believe that the biggest problem in dentistry is dental anxiety, right? So if we can crush dental anxiety, we actually have the power to transform the industry. So setting the stage for that, we talk about our therapeutic virtual reality platform, OperaVR, and the misconception that we have not obviously addressed appropriately enough is exactly what you're saying, that what makes this a system, not just a headset, right?
Right. And so what was funny to me, it was actually a really funny interaction. So we've got one of our podcast listeners that was, I believe, is out of Buenos Aires.
Yes.
And so he
Thank you.
He got online and started chatting with me on our website, asking some questions about OperaVR, and told me that he had tried an Oculus Go or Oculus Go type device. And so sat in his dental chair, turned it on, and all that he saw were clouds because the orientation of the device is set so that it's looking up. And so in that environment, that all you're going to see is clouds when you're sitting in a dental chair because the orientation of the device is pointing up. And so the upside for me when I'm talking to other people about purchasing OperaVR, I use that as an example all the time now of, well, what's the difference? And this is one of a million differences that we have, that we've addressed, that people don't think of when we create something to be super easy for practices to use. This is one of the million reasons why it's super easy to use. Whenever I'm talking to people about our OperaVR, I'm like, it can be just as simple as turning it on, placing it over the patient's eyes, and it will just go. It just does exactly what it's supposed to do, which is relieve patient anxiety. And it does exactly that with way less hassle than nitrous oxide.
Yeah, and I like the way you said that, because that's just one reason, and frankly, if we could not have a headset that's specific to our platform, I would love to use everybody's VR headset. But the actual terms and conditions of Facebook and actually the process, we could not do a quarter of the things that we do in OperaVR. Because we would be bumped out of the terms and conditions because they will only focus on specific types of content, will not allow you to do many of the things that we do. Not that it's like bad for anybody, but it just doesn't make sense for Facebook to have some a web remote and the facts that we have and the type of content. All of that it doesn't align with the typical app store, but it is exactly what needs to happen in an operatory, right?
Yeah.
And so what I tell people now after we've been thinking about this a little bit and like, how did we get to this point where we failed so miserably? It's because we looked at it and went, well, we'd love to be able to not have the headset, but to get the system to deliver exactly what people need, basically, we're going to develop this as a complete system, which has been very effective. And we forget to let people know it's not available anywhere else because it's just, because it wouldn't be, you could not do what we're doing and have it be on another headset. It's just not available. And so what I've been saying to people, particularly CEREC users, because I've been a CEREC instructor or in my past life, I was a CEREC instructor. It's like saying, well, okay, I bought a Dell computer. How can I do CAD/CAM dentistry? It's like, it's not about the computer, right? There's all sorts of software and the camera and everything else that's involved with it. And that's really what we've developed is we use the VR headset much like the nasal hood works for nitrous oxide, right? You can't buy a nasal hood and put it on your nose and feel more calm. It's just, it's the delivery system.
Right.
And that's really what the VR headset is, only a delivery system. We have a whole back end web controller where you control everything. And we obviously are creating the content. We could go through the number of things, but like you said, it's hard to. That's like if you sat here and said, wow, how is a Dell computer different than a CAD/CAM dentistry computer, a CEREC, or there's many CAD/CAM systems out there now. How's that different? Well, there's a lot of different ways, and there's maybe not a million, but there's a million reasons why it won't work. Right.
Yep.
And the simplest, like the easiest, is just you do not want a patient to open up, see a bunch of tiles with different applications, and then have to go in there. I mean, from very simple reasons like that, like you mentioned, just being able to put it on, don't even have to focus now. You just slide it on your face and then you just go, right?
Yep.
But I'm sorry, the dentist in Buenos Aires, because I feel like we did fail you, and I think it's because we're so excited about what's going on that you forget, I think, and this is a common thing that I do. What's something that's going on in my brain? It's hard to you haven't walked the path of trying a bunch of things, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about on this podcast, and the actual reasons why OperaVR is different. So we've mentioned a couple of them. Patients can just sit back and relax. We have a web remote where you, as the dental team, actually have control of what the patient's seeing and hearing. There's post-operative instructional videos, like it's pure dental content. You're not going to get that anywhere else. You referenced the reason why we should talk about, I'll have you explain, Dave, why would somebody looking on an Oculus headset be looking at the sky?
You can't reset the orientation. So when you're vertical and standing, it will show you a great environment and it'll be super cool. But when you lay back in a chair, it assumes your orientation is now facing up, and now you're facing the sky. And so, one of the millions of things that, what
I'm getting at is that, so sorry to interrupt you, but I interrupted you. I'm just kidding. I think what's going on here, what I'm asking you to explain is that exactly what I was saying before. If somebody is listening to this, they may have never put on a VR headset before.
Right.
That's a very likely scenario.
Yeah.
Probably the majority of our listeners have not put on a VR headset before.
Right.
So what Dave's describing is that, the way VR works is usually a 360-degree video.
Yeah.
Or picture or 360-degree experience.
Yep.
And so it's whatever you're looking at. If you turn to the left, you see whatever's to the left. If you see whatever's to the right, you turn to the right, you see that. So if you're sitting in a beautiful nature scene, a waterfall is right in front of you. You can look down, you can see the stream. And then as soon as you get laid back in the chair, you look directly up at the sky,
Yes.
right? And you cannot reset that. And in Opera VR, you A, can reset that, and B, almost all of the content, most of the content that we have for the dental experience is stereoscopic 3D. So when you lay back, the actual image goes with you, right? Yep. So if you're looking at the waterfall and you lay back, you're still looking at the exact same experience. That does a couple different things. One, it makes it so you're not looking at the sky, right? The whatever you should be looking at or want to look at is directly in front of you at all times. And it disincentivizes people from looking around. When you have a 360 experience, it's fun and cool to look around at what's behind you, what's above and below. And I don't know about you, listeners, but as a dentist, I don't want my patients looking around. I came down yesterday, was working on a sedated patient that was like, would not keep still. And I was just like, man, that was the worst. It was so hard because she was flopping around like crazy. I would have rather worked on a patient in VR who's being incentivized just to look straight ahead, yep, keep their mouth open, and they're out on the beach than the patient who's actually sedated under chemicals and you don't have the control of their awareness. Right. Yep. Yeah. So sorry to interrupt you, but I think that you are assuming that people had put on a VR headset when you were explaining that. Yeah. So I think that's kind of my my confession for the podcast today is I feel like we did not adequately explain to people kind of the benefits of therapeutic virtual reality through OperaVR and why it's different than something that you buy from a like Best Buy or a consumer store, something you buy off Amazon. It's a totally different system. We use virtual reality just like other headsets, but the content, the delivery system, the web remote, the features we have specifically designed for the dental office. And so we are going to be coming out with some cool new direct-to-consumer type versions of OperaVR and home therapies, which OperaVR will be in the Apple App Store probably by the time you listen to this podcast. And so you can check it out, but it's different content, it's totally different than the OperaVR that we use for dental offices. Yeah. It's the name's the same, but we'll have a refresh on the website for sort of a patient version and the office version. But it's very different content, very different engine and feature set. The OperaVR that's used for the dental office is unique in a lot of ways, right? Yeah. Anyways, anything that you want to mention, kind of like come to top of your mind, Dave, is like another reason why, what I'm thinking of is we should have informed this dentist in Buenos Aires of that kind of about the differences. And so anything that springs to mind for you?
The biggest thing when talking to dentists that I talk about with this is ease of use. And that's really what this conversation that we're having is coming down to, quality of content and ease of use. Mm-hmm. And so with OperaVR, it is specifically designed so that if you sit a person back in their dental chair, there's no readjustment, there's no push this button, it just works. And then the content, like you were mentioning earlier, is a single point of focus. So it encourages the patient to keep their head still. So if they turn their head from left to right, it will stay, the image stays the same. We have both types of content. We have 360 immersive environments that are awesome and cool and will definitely capture the patient's attention, but the single point of focus is really what you want to be working on a patient with. And the reason that we have the 360 immersive environments is mostly because we got so much demand for it. And
because it's cool,
right? Because it is cool. It's amazing, and we can put together some amazing content, and we'll continue to do so. And it comes out for free. We add it to the device for free. It becomes available quarterly. We put out new content, and that's our big push right now is to add new content and make sure that we're really engaging the patient.
Yeah, and I think the biggest problem that we have, not problem, but the biggest hurdle we have towards dentists adopting it is that they don't fully understand the scope of anxiety that's going on in operatories, right? And you know, as you obviously are bringing to the podcast the patient experience all the time, even though you don't have dental anxiety, as you very much, but you can see how the value of looking at things through the patient's eyes.
Yeah.
And usually those eyes are widened and scared.
Yeah.
80% of adults in the U.S. have dental anxiety. And that's why I kind of mentioned it quickly. But, you know, the biggest opportunities in anything come from solving the biggest problems. And we become desensitized to dental anxiety as dentists. And it's funny, when we were just in Vegas doing a trade show, and OperaVR was featured in the Las Vegas Tribune, and I have to mention the line that I thought was very funny in the article. They said they called me the piñata of medicine because dentists get beat up because everybody hates them, right?
Right.
And then the line that I swear the writer must have put in there just to see if he could get it printed, and it was on the front page of the health section of the newspaper, said dentists have a worse rep than hall monitors and kitten punchers. Which we have a dentist that loves kittens in the office, so that was, I was like, you literally got compared to being worse than a kitten puncher. I don't know how that happened, but that was, I mean, just seeing an article about something that you've created that compares dentists to kitten punchers. Well, there's a weird satisfaction in that for some reason.
Well, and so one of the things that I want to point out is that the number of times that you go into a market where the local media wants to interview you about VR.
It is 100%.
Right. And it's the same reason that when I tell people, you know who wants to try virtual reality sedation next time they go to the dentist? Everybody. Mm-hmm. And you know how you find out? Ask anyone. And that's what I've realized in this position is that everybody has some level of dental anxiety, and everybody would rather be in a virtual reality environment than looking up at two people coming at them with instruments and needles.
Or the sky.
Yeah.
So they don't want to use a virtual reality system, right?
Right.
They want to use one that's tailor-made for their experience.
Exactly.
And so that's OperaVR.
Yeah.
You can find out more at digitalnitrous.com. Thank you very much, Dave. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian.
I also want to remind you to rate and review us wherever you're listening to this podcast. And if you have suggestions or comments, please visit theoperatory.com and drop us a line. Again, I'm Dr. Brian Laskin, host of The Operatory. Thanks for listening. I look forward to speaking with you next week.